And we're back with me, Johnny McMurray, on the On the Spot football podcast with a good friend, an ex-Irish League legend, an ex-manager, someone who's very opinionated, controversial, and just an all-round good guy. Gary Hamilton. Gary, how are you?
I'm good, mate. Good. Been a while now since I've been in football, but it's been all good. It's been giving me a bit of time to look at other aspects of my life and look at other things.
Good. Well, thank you again for coming on. I know you're not a fan of doing interviews and podcasts and different things like that, but I really wanted to have you on. I feel like you're somebody that needs to get their story out there, and I've spent a load of time in the Irish League and I've had many conversations with you, and genuinely, man, I just really think that you're a good guy, and I think people should understand that. So thank you very much for joining me today.
Anytime, Johnny. Anytime.
So, want to get started. I'm going to kick into your football career at some stage, but I want to know, who is Gary Hamilton? How was your life growing up? How did you get into football? How did you end up managing? Why did you end up managing? So I want to take you back to the very start.
I'd say I'm different. I grew up in the countryside. My dad was a farmer from a farming background, and we grew up with nobody around us. But on the other side, my mum's side of the family, there was a lot of sport on that side of the family. My nanny on that side, her brothers played in Scotland, played for Linfield and stuff like that. And then my mum's two brothers, Robbie and Davy, ended up playing football for Dunavon. And Robbie went on to Wolves in England, had 10 years there and played for Northern Ireland. Davy played for Glenavon, played a wee bit over in England when he worked over in England for Trowbridge, and then come back to Glenavon. And then he also played cricket for Ireland as well. And my auntie, my mum's sister, she played netball for Ireland. So there's a lot of sport in that side of the family. And as I said, we grew up on a farm out in the country with nobody around us. And, it was different, looking back now. I'd love to live in a house like that. And I own a house like that now. But when you're younger, like you're jealous of your mates in school with kids living beside them. You could play with other kids and everything else like that. But we just didn't have that. So, the only thing I had was a ball on the wall. And from a young age, because of my uncles and that, we watched them, I just started kicking the ball against the wall and wanted to be like them. And I started off, I think it was Lurgan Town, I think I went to at the start when I was about 8 or 9. And then I started playing for the school. I was playing for the school football team when I was P4, and I was only P4 in the team. So, and then I just started at Lurgan Town and started playing. I think I was a year above myself at the time. I think there was only one age group and they played me in there. And, believe it or not, I started out as centre midfielder. I played centre midfield most of my young days till I was about 13. And then I moved on to the likes of Lisburn Youth and played the rest of my time there before I went across the water.
Did you do many jobs growing up on the farm?
None. Believe it or not, that was one thing about my dad. I used to show interest, don't get me wrong, I did, because obviously we grew up around it, but my dad never wanted us to be a farmer. He seen the hours that he was putting in, and he didn't want that for us. He wanted us to get into sport and do things like that. And we always used to want to go down with my granddad and my dad and do stuff, but he tried to encourage us to stay away. I'm not saying he stopped us from going down or stopped us from being around it, but there was a wee period, I think, at one stage when I become a wee bit more interested. But again, it's quickly shifted over to the football side of things.
I was going to say to myself, Gary Hamilton and a wee JCB driving around the farm too.
No chance.
So whenever you start, then you're obviously you're out in the country most of the time. As you say, you touch on there that most of your friends would have been inner city kids or in and around different developments, should I say. Did that feel quite isolating for you at the time?
Yeah, and it's probably played. Looking back now, I do a lot of work with therapists and stuff now, and psychologists and stuff, and something I've always been very, very interested in. I've done a lot of over at Blackburn as well with it when I come back home and played. But since I come out of football, I've been able to do a lot more of it and look into other aspects of my life. And I've always been a loner as such. Don't get me wrong, I've really good close friends. I've 3 or 4 really good tight friends and that. But again, I've always kept myself to myself, and I've always been that type of guy. And I think that obviously it's from your childhood experiences and your inherited behaviour. And as I said, my dad inherited that and passed it on to us. And the only time we really got the mix was at school. And again, when you're in school, you're in class, you can't really talk, so you really had lunchtime and break time, and then obviously after school sports or football training, we got the mix there as well. But again, as soon as we come come back from that. We were on our own, and we were at the farm, and to be fair, my brother Mark, who did play a bit of football as well at that time, wasn't really into it. So you were on your own, just kicking a ball against the wall, and it's probably why I was decent at both feet, because it's all I've ever done. It was literally kick the ball against the wall all day long, and practice my touch and stuff like that, and practice finishing, you know. So it was lonely, but then again, it's probably why, you know, I put so many hours of practice in, and probably stood in a good stead in the long run, because I had no other things going on around me to get me involved in.
I know you're saying there about the hours of practice and different things you had done while you were kind of alone and you had to, but I don't think actually people understand the amount of hours that people should be doing, or kids should actually be doing nowadays. And I feel like generations change where kids are more focused now on PlayStations, phones, iPads than actually being out in the street kicking a ball at a wall.
Yeah.
As such.
Johnny, I'm with you in that one, and it winds me up. You know, I try to not be a strict parent, and, you know, learn from the past. But as I said, even my kids now, like, you know, in my house, when they stay with me, obviously me and their mum separated, but when they stay with me, it's no phones at the kitchen table, you know, and dinner has to be at the kitchen table, because nowadays you see people and they're sitting eating in the living room or watching TV, and you never actually ever get time to sit down and talk to each other, and as a family, or as a dad and two kids, or mum and two kids, or whatever it may be. And I think it's vital, and I think it's another reason why there's so many. Like, and obviously I was involved at Glenavon, but I kept a really close eye on the academy and that, and there was so many kids struggling mentally as well. And again, I just think there's not enough talking done these days, and everything's on a mobile phone, and anybody that's working with me at Glenavon or anything else, you know, I understand people being on social media to, like yourself or something, for the pro work or stuff like that, but, you know, unless it's for that, you know, I just don't understand the need to be on social media and sit for hours on end looking at TikToks and Instagrams and looking to see who's liking you and who's disliking you. Because for me, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, you know, it actually doesn't matter. And people seem to want people to validate them and tell them they're good at something or whatever. And I think that's why the world's going a bit crazy.
I completely agree with you. I want to move on then. So you started playing football at a young age. At what age does Gary Hamilton realise that Gary Hamilton has talent? Was it quite early?
I knew I had ability at primary school, because, as I said, I was P4. I was only P4 in the school team, and I went to a decent sized primary school. I knew I had a bit of ability then, and we got a cup final one day. And we won 2-1, and I scored 2 goals. It was actually, believe it or not, I was at Mourneview against a team from Banbridge, and we had a headmaster at that time. He just moved, and halfway through in my last year, my P7 year, called Gary Candy, and he ended up, you might know of him, Johnny. He was heavily involved in Linfield, but he also ended up like chairman of the school's FA, Northern Ireland Schoolboy team. So you would probably know of him. But Gary Candy come in at that stage, and he had a lot of contacts, and he was able to get this final at Mourneview Park, and I scored a couple of goals in that. And to be fair, it was probably him that probably made me realise that I had something, you know, and he kept in touch with me, and I stayed at Lurgan Town for a few years after that. And at 13, like, he kept saying to me to go down to St Andrews or Lisburn Youth, because he couldn't believe there hadn't been any trials.
Yeah.
And like, at that stage, there was other kids at 11, 12, and them days there were going to trials at that age, but I hadn't been in any. And I remember going to a tournament in Holland with St Andrews, but whenever I went over there, Warren Feeney-Staddy was managing the team, and Warren was playing, and they played a 4-3-3. It was actually a really good team. Stevie Carson all played for that team, Colin Finney and all. But whenever I went out there, they played me out right wing, and I'd been used to playing centre midfield or else centre forward. And when I went out there, I just come back and I went, nah, I'm going to go back to Lurgan Town. But I ended up deciding to go to Lisburn Youth, because they had come up to my house one night and chatted to me and my father and that, and sold it to us. And to be fair, it was the best thing I ever done, because, and Mr. Candy was right in that one as well, because I think I was only at Lisburn Youth a few months, and I was away on trials, you know, and went to, I think it was Stoke and West Ham and teams like that in the first year. And and it was through Mr. Kennedy, because probably up until he got involved, I probably wouldn't have moved. I probably would have stayed at Lurgan, you know.
It shows you that it only takes one person to have a bit of an eye and a load of confidence to try and push you in the right direction.
Yeah, and I'll say one thing about him as well. Like, he pushed every kid in the school. He was an amazing headmaster, and you know, he stayed at that school for, say, up until about 5 or 6 years ago, probably, maybe a wee bit longer. But my oldest kid had the experience of him. Kyle Neal, believe it or not, had the experience of him in Anningmore, because that's where he moved from Anningmore to Warringstown. And it's funny the way the world works, because it was him that pushed Kyler in his football career, and then me and Kyler ended up at Portadown together, and we ended up becoming best mates, and it was the same person that pushed the both of us. So, you know, the world works in strange ways, and me and Kyler are still best mates now, and from we met at Portadown. And say Mr. Kennedy is still part of our lives as well, and the family's lives. And you know, it's a nice story, because, as I say, he was the one behind it all. And you know, but he pushed the kids at everything. Like, at Warringstown won choir of the year at school. He pushed them at speech and drama. He pushed the girls at hockey. He just was one of these people. If you had a talent, he pushed you in it, and try to encourage you to get and to do better things with what your talent is.
Someone like that is you kind of feel like that's like a dying breed of teachers, because I worked in a school for a while, and you see kids, and it's kind of just like they're too nuts. Just let them have their time, or they go ballistic, and then they move on to the next class, and that's your class done, and you can settle. And nobody actually wants, like, there's probably a small portion of people who want kids to really strive to be successful. Do you know what I mean? And
it's true, and again, also, but I think teachers have a hard job these days as well, because a lot's been taken away from them. And you know, I've seen it in football as well. If you tell a child off, or you say anything negative in any shape or way, even if it's constructive, you know, the parents are on the phone and giving off. And you know, it's a really difficult job for school teachers these days. And you know, sometimes, like, Mr. Kennedy used to give us criticism, you know, at times in school, but it was constructive. You know, it was for the right reasons. It wasn't that he was bullying us, or you know, picking on us. So he was giving us good information that would stand us in good stead. And you know, again, I remember having a conversation with him near the end, and I think that's why he moved on whenever he could, because it was all taken away from him, and there was other exterior motives were affecting the job that he had done all his life. And you know, it's just across the board now. And again, I've said it, I think social media for me is a massive reason behind it all. But also, you know, I think parents as well. I think we as parents, you know, need to do better as well, all of us, and respect that whenever a kid's with a teacher, or with a football coach, or whatever it is, like, it's like human nature. Like, whenever you get given 30 kids, you're not going to pick on a kid just for no reason. You know, somebody has to give you a reason if you're going to have a shout at them, or have a go at them, or you know, because it's not in the human nature just to look at a kid and go, I don't like you. You know, you know, it's the way it is. But unfortunately, in this day and age, you know, if a kid's not getting picked, or a kid's being told off for something or whatever,
you use an umbrage against them.
The teachers are bullying them, or whatever else. And I think that's where we as parents have a responsibility as well, to recognise that, and you know, to not just believe every word that comes out of our children's mouth. And because we've all been there. We've all told lied to our parents. We've all, you know, and whenever your kids go to school, or they go to football, then it's up to them people to be left in charge of them, and to trust them to give them the right things.
I want to bring you back to when you start going on trials. How did that feel for you to be then involved in potentially moving to England, and being so much from the country?
Truthfully, I want to be honest with you. So whenever I went my first trial, it was to West Ham, and my dad could tell you a story. But I went over to West Ham. In them days, you didn't go over your dad or anything. You went over your own. You got dropped at the airport. In them days, there was a woman or a man or whatever would have brought you through onto the plane and stuff like that. You got over the far side. There'd have been somebody standing with a placard with your name on it to bring you to the hotel.
Imagine trying to do that now. Jesus, you lose your kids.
It just wouldn't happen. It just wouldn't happen. The clubs couldn't do it now either, but you were left at the other side, somebody with a placard with your name, he brought you to the hotel, and then the club come picked you up the next morning and brought you around the training, and that was it. And you went in, and the first time I went in, and it was for a match. I think I flew over on a Saturday afternoon and played a match on a Sunday, and I think it was Colchester, and it was under 13s, but whenever we went in the change room, the coach at the time turned around and said, listen lads, we've somebody up from the year below today, and I want us to look after him. You know, he's a good kid, and you know, he's being rewarded for how he's doing and stuff like that. And I was dead on, so went and played the match. Colchester actually beat us 4-0 to be honest with you. But this kid come on, and he was just in a different level. He was doing rainbow flicks over people, and I'd never seen this before. I had never actually genuinely seen somebody do a rainbow flick. And this kid come on and done this, and I was standing there, I was going, I am absolutely nowhere near.
Yeah.
Like nowhere near this level. It was Joe Cole.
Right.
It was Joe Cole.
No.
And I remember going home and telling my dad, I made sure I got his name after the trial, and I went home and told my dad, what do you say this boy Joe Cole? I said, Dad, I'm nowhere near, I'm a million miles away from that level. You know, and this guy, Joe Cole, remember his name, and he come over to the Milk Cup the following year as a year young, won the player of the Milk Cup.
There's also a few
on the year after I won the player of Milk Cup.
Yeah. And
I said, Dad, I didn't tell you about him. And he was just a different level. And to be fair, Johnny, that happened to me a couple of times. I went to Stoke and I'd done okay at Stoke, finished top goal scorer in the tournament there for them. And then I went to Wolves, and I never forget it when I went to Wolves, because my uncle was there and all. That was a one for me. Like I wanted to go to Wolves, and I wanted to go there, and then I could have been close to my uncle and stuff like that. And I went over, and Wolves were decent, to be fair to them, and I just again was nowhere near. And the coach at the time was a guy called Rob Kelly, and whenever he went, he says, listen, after the first third, I played 3 thirds, he moved me out to the right wing, because he said I had no pace, which I hadn't, you know, and the two strikers were lightning quick, and they moved me out the right wing and I set up 2, and then I come back home and he said he'd be in touch and stuff like that. And I think because Uncle Robbie was worried with all that, they went through Uncle Robbie, and Uncle Robbie just phoned and basically said that, you know, they thought it was decent ability and had a decent delivery on me, a decent strike on me and stuff like that, but you know, I hadn't the pace to be a centre forward, and that they weren't going to, you know, pursue it, and that was it, and I probably wasn't fit enough as well, and I always remember him when I heard that word, I just went, that's killed me. But again, my personality is, and again I'll touch on someone else later on, but I've got this all or nothing personality, and that's just the way I am in every walk of life, and I come home that time and I went, right, I'm not quick enough, I'm not fit enough, and I literally went out running every single day and done 2 or 3 mile runs, and at the end of it, I was near sprinting around the 2 or 3 miles. I knew it was never going to be quick enough, but I went, right, he said I wasn't quick enough and I wasn't fit enough, so I need to do something about this. And probably anybody that played me later in the career wouldn't say it was like that, but in them days I was so, and again, driven, and again it was that nobody's going to tell me I can't do something, and I'm not good enough. And even though in my head I knew it wasn't good enough,
right,
I was going, I'm going to make sure I'm going to try and prove that I am decent enough to do it. And it took a while after that, and went a few other trials, Crystal Palace and stuff like that. But it wasn't really until under 15 Blackburn brought me over, playing the schoolboys, and there was a boy, Derek Langley. He ended up, I think, a head scout of Man United or something at the time, but he was Blackburn at the time, and he brought me over. And I went over and played against England schoolboys. Blackburn played the actual full schoolboy team. We drew 2 each one, and I scored 2. Right. And after that, they went, there's something here, you know, and that was the first time probably that I thought to myself after, I have a wee chance, you know, of just played in a Blackburn team against a full England side and scored 2. So
that would have been the Victory Shield.
So it was exactly the Victory Shield. So and I used to go around playing all the good academy team. Blackburn were a really good academy in them days, and they would have played Man United, Blackburn, Liverpool, Everton as their warm up games, and you know, I remember coming away that day and went, maybe that extra work I've put in and that there's starting to pay off for me. And then the definite time was under 16, and we played in a qualifying tournament up in, I think it was Coleraine, I think it was. And again, I've seen my memory with good things. It's bad. But we went up to Coleraine and we played 2 games. In the first game, I'd be honest with you, I couldn't tell you the result. But I know we played the second game. We had to beat Republic Ireland. And the bit was a derby, obviously, as well. Yeah. And whoever won that got the journey to the Euros, must have been the Euros, because I didn't play in the World Cup, so it must have been Euros at under 16 level. And we beat Republic that night 4-0 and scored all 4.
Brilliant.
So it did. And that was whenever, after that, I must have had 8-9 phone calls, and it wasn't even, do you want to come and trial? It was literally contract offers, you know, and it was from clubs that told me I wasn't good enough.
Oh, right,
as well, which we're never getting, you know. That was never my makeup again, my personality. But
it's like again, that Wolves thing, you were never going back.
No, I was never, you know, and that was just the way I was. But to be fair, again, it's probably me and my loyalty as well times, because Blackburn brought me over that time when nobody was offering me contracts and that, and I went and done well, and they kept at me, and people are saying, well, just don't decide just yet. We had after the Victory Shield, and we had the, you know, under 16 or whatever. And to be fair, I always had it in my mind, well, they didn't cast me aside at any stage, and you know, it's only because I scored those 4 goals that these other clubs have come in. They weren't in the picture before, so I sort of stuck my loyalty to Blackburn at that time, and to be fair, they were really good to me and the family and stuff like that, so that also helped.
To be fair, we can kind of, from a young age, even though you're saying about that and how you managed to stick by it, most of your career has been the same. You've been very loyal to certain clubs that we'll probably touch on later on in the interview, but that kind of sounds like that's been your makeup from a very young age.
It has been, yeah. It's always been me, and like Johnny, I'm a strange person. Like, there's no point in denying it. Like, I don't take to too many people. But once I let somebody into my life, that's it. You know what I mean? And I'll do anything for them. I mean, absolutely anything for them. But there's only a few people get there, and like, I could go into a room and within 2 minutes go, nope, he's not for me, and walk out. And I've seen me being out for dinner with ex-partners and that, and being in a couple with other couples and just going, these aren't for me, and walking out. And her turning around and going, you're ignorant, and you're that, and you're that. But it's just not me. I'm not going to waste my time and the time that I have sitting with people that aren't for me. And
see, the difference between me and you is I probably would have finished that meal first and then that.
Or you'd had his meat as well.
His scraps and then I'm like,
well, like, that's just me. That's just the way I am. And again, I found out more down the line, but it's people haven't been diagnosed with officially, but I've been seeing therapists now and different things like that, and they've told me I've ADHD. So, you know, and I've done a couple of tests with them, and it's come back positive. And now I've got to this stage in life, you know, I've done okay, and I've always knew there was something different. And again, not jumping backwards or forwards, but I started doing a bit of taxi running there over the last year or so, and one of my first runs, believe it or not, was a kid with ADHD.
Right.
And I remember I brought him to school every day for 3 months. And I struck a boy relationship with him. He was a really good kid. But I remember sitting thinking, that's me. That's me. And the more I kept spending time with him, the more I was going, he was so loyal to people, but everybody else didn't matter.
Yeah.
At all.
Singly focused.
He literally, anything else going on around him. And I was going, that kid's so like me. And he's told me he's ADHD. And I'm thinking to myself, he doesn't sleep, he doesn't do this. All these traits that he has is me. And he was getting medication and stuff like that. But again, it was that. And then I started speaking to other therapists, and I'm going, listen, have you ever been tested for ADHD? And I've gone, no, I've never been tested for it. Well, will you mind doing a test that I have here? And yeah, whatever.
Figure it out.
But again, now it's all relating. I can relate to everything right from childhood right through now, you know, and listen, it has an effect. I mean, in a roundabout way in football, it's done me a world of good.
Yeah,
but it's actually worked for me
100%.
because doesn't matter what anybody says about me in football. It literally doesn't matter. I could care less. You know, now if Macker said something to me or Keller said something to me,
That's because you had that trust.
it could hurt me.
Yeah.
You know, but supporters, players,
Yeah.
other opposition, nothing ever flinched me in terms of that, and it couldn't affect me. So it probably stood me in good stead in terms of just being able to continue playing and not your confidence going. And like, I never really went a period in my life where I went on a bad run because my confidence never went.
I wish that was,
You know, and
kind of like me or too, to be honest, but I can't say it.
no, but that was the way it was. Like, up until I joined Glenavon at the end, I never went more than 4 games or to score a goal.
Oh God, it must feel amazing, to be honest.
And that was because I never let anything affect me. It wasn't and even other things, like, again, going back to the impulsiveness of me, you know, if I hadn't scored for 3 games, I knew 4 was my marker. I'd have went and played in the reserves that week to score a goal at reserves. Now, that didn't count in the 4 games, but I knew I needed to go and score a goal.
Yeah.
And then and people were going, why do you want to go and play reserves? But I knew that worked for me. And so I went and played reserves that week. And then that Saturday, I went and scored. And it was 100% guaranteed. You know, it was just the way it worked. But up until a period, until I come to Glenavon and as a player manager and I started playing everywhere, you know, I didn't play up front every week and stuff like that. I hadn't really went I know for a fact I hadn't went over 4 games without scoring a goal. That was just the way it was.
See, when we look at you going away at that age, the reason why I want to touch on it is because I've personally never had those experiences. And at such a young age to go away, you're saying at 15 you were sort of brought in an airport, stuck on a flight, dropped off at 13. Jeez, it's even worse. At 13, you're brought in an airport, stuck on a flight, you're picked up at the other end with these random people who you don't know, you're literally just putting all your trust in them. Mentally, how does that make you feel? Because I can't comprehend what that would potentially feel like for me.
Truthfully, again, where we go back to catch-22, you know, I lived out in the country all my life.
So it was easy, kind of easier for you?
Like, I remember going over to England and Stevie Hall and Johnny Topley and Skatesy and all, and all them boys got homesick at some stage. I never in my life got homesick, ever. In fact, there was weekends that we could have come home and I didn't go home. So it was just because it was just me, you know. I was always used to being like that, and so, but the other lads, they couldn't wait. Every 6 weeks we got home and they couldn't wait. So hopefully they got home and see their friends and their family. But I knew whenever I went home, don't get me wrong, I want to see my family and that, but I wasn't going home to see my friends or do any of that, because again, all my life I just dedicated to football when I was back home, and then I went over there, and then again, there's 2 ways looking at it. You go over there and then all of a sudden you are around people and people are doing this and that, and you start following crowds and, you know, trying to fit in, and so it can have the other reaction, and it can go against you too, you know. So, but that side of it, in terms of traveling on my own and being on my own, or not all the times, most of the times we had another player with us as well. You always had somebody else. You maybe didn't always know them, but there was maybe another player. There was only the odd trial I went on, I was 100% on my own. But it never really bothered me. That side of it didn't bother me, but I could see how. And I look now, my youngest child's 14. There's absolutely no chance he could do it.
Yeah.
There's no chance.
Yeah.
Like, if I dropped him to the airport and said, right, go and get on that plane there, he wouldn't know what to do. But again, there's
different times.
There's lots of things that have been taken away from kids as well, and that's just the way it is, you know. And I'd say my oldest at 17 would struggle, never mind my youngest, you know. But it's just the way it is. But back in the day, you were used to doing things like, even like, you remember back in the day, most kids walked to school or cycled to school and cross roads and done all these things themselves. And from obviously there's less cars and everything else in the road, and probably safer too, like. But nowadays you just couldn't imagine and turn around a 13-year-old kid and saying, right, I want to leave you to the airport and you're going to England. It just wouldn't happen.
No, and as I say, I touched on her, I laughed about it earlier. You would probably lose your kids because you were like, right, go on, you go. Do you know what I mean? But it's just trying to comprehend, because I've never had the experiences of going away at that age. I barely went and slept at my granny's overnight. I couldn't leave the house, to be honest. I was a weird home child, like, and just wanted to be in the house all the time. And yes, go out and kick a ball about, but it's crazy how 2 people can have 2 different things.
Again,
it's comfortable. You know what I mean?
It's what you're used to. You know, it's what you're used to. And you're obviously used to living in a development with other people around you. You're used to tight family and stuff like that, and that's what that comes with that. And as I said, the likes of Johnny Topley was used to that, and like Johnny, it used to destroy Johnny. See, when he come back home from that weekend,
Struggled to go back.
Johnny wasn't right for a week, you know.
Right, okay.
And then he come out of it, you know. But
Yeah.
it took him near a week to get out of it, and because he was used to a tight knit unit. And again, as much as my family, like my mum was a stay at home mum, so she was always about. But like, it wasn't as if I even had my dad about all my life. He was out working, you know. Again, he's all or nothing. Like, he keeps going the herd behaviour, and he was out 6 a.m, wasn't back to 9:30, 10 at night. So we never seen him, you know. So it wasn't as if we had a tight family in terms of that. Yes, we were close, but we weren't like most families, you know. We weren't together all the time, you know, and that was the way it was. My dad was out working, earning a living for the two of them, so my mum could stay at home and mind us and do all, because again, we needed somebody to bring us to school, because there were no buses, so we needed somebody at home to bring us to school, lift us from school, because we lived so far out in the countryside.
How do you compare your relationship to your boys that you're on with your own dad?
Totally different. And again, listen, I had to sit and speak to people, and as I said, in the therapy and psychiatrists and stuff like that through my life. And you know, my mum and dad are two of the best people ever. Like, you know, they would do anything for anybody. But again, their parents and the way they were loved was the way that they've loved us. You know, it's just come down generation after generation after generation. And you know, my dad was an old school farmer. There was no emotion. There was no, you know, I love you, son, or I'm proud of you, son, or, you know, probably the only thing he had off him was criticism, you know, and that was the way it was. But he got the same from his dad. And again, we got that. And like, it's so funny, because obviously when the two of us started playing Mark and me, Mark wouldn't let Dad go to watch him. I had my mum go to watch him, because he was so hard on us, you know. And like, I seen me coming off a match and maybe scoring 4 goals, and he would all he would talk about was the ones he missed. He'd say, well done for the 4 goals, but you should have scored this, you should have scored that, you should have scored that. And I knew, see, when I played really bad, and I knew I played really bad, I used to always go to a wee mate, here, do you want to come back to my house tonight? But I knew if he got in the car with me and my dad wouldn't share it, me, I'd go way home. And that was the way it was, and that was just the way we brought up. Like, I've never seen my mum and dad hug, I've never seen my mum and dad kiss, 44 years of age, and they're still together, you know. And it was just different, you know. And whereas me, I tell my kids that I'm proud of them all the time if they do well. Don't get me wrong, I still, when they don't do well, or I never say don't do well, if I think they're not working hard enough, or they're not putting enough into something to commit to, then I'll say that, because I think effort's the bare minimum, and if you want to do anything in life, you have to go all in at it. But I'll never turn around and say you're bad today, or I'd say, do you know what, son, you need to get fitter, but you can do that, you need to go and work on that. But I'll never question their ability or anything like that, because at the end of the day, you know, everybody has different ability levels, but
you don't want to break them down either.
You know, and listen, again, I look back now as well, and I've spoke to people about this. I really benefited from what happened with my dad,
right?
Because nobody could put me down. Nobody could knock my confidence, because
you were so
all I was used to. You know, all I was used to was getting told the bad things, and you'd have got well done the odd time, you know, but you'd have never got anything over the top. You'd have got, that needs to be better. You need to do that better. You need to do this better, you know. And it was very, very hard. But again, when I look back, especially whenever I went into management, if I hadn't had that, I'd have crumbled. You know, because if you don't have a hard exterior and literally, I just went zonal. Like, I literally, and the coaches that work with me will tell you, when I'd been standing on a match on a Saturday, they'd have been talking to me, I couldn't even hear them. I literally just went in a zone, and I just didn't hear anything going on around me. And like, I remember even near the end, my kids were at the matches near the end, I was killing them, like, and they were singing songs about me, about getting me out or whatever it was, and like, my kids would have in the car, did you hear what they're singing about you? I never heard a song sung once, you know, because it was just, I just developed this skill when I went to from a young age with my dad and all, because I knew my dad would have been standing on the sideline shouting at me
Yeah.
during the match, and I would just have felt this skill. I don't even hear him. I don't hear him. And-
See, sorry to jump in there. See, whenever you said, you touched slightly on there that he would have give you some confidence, did that feel like the world when he gave you that, or did you just take it and be like, thanks, move on?
It was the best feeling ever when he said well done, obviously. But you know the one thing, Johnny, and it's something, and listen, I know he's told other people this, but again, it's the way the older generation was and stuff like that. The one thing I always craved was my dad to turn around and say, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you playing for Northern Ireland. I'm proud of you win the league. I'm proud of you finish the top goal. That was one thing I waited on all my life, you know. And it's, listen, I never ever go against or think bad of my dad for that, because I know he's told other people that he's proud of me because they've told me. But from my perspective, that's what I've been craving all my life. And I think that's what's kept me so hungry all my life, because I just go, please, Dad, say that to me one day, please. But listen, I know he thinks it, but that's why whenever I played, a manager could have come into me and went, you were brilliant today. And it meant nothing to me.
Yeah.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I knew if I played well, I knew if I played bad. And no matter what anybody told me,
It just brushed it.
brushed off me. In fact, I actually got embarrassed if somebody told me I'd done well.
Yeah.
I found it uncomfortable. I find it uncomfortable if somebody comes over and says to me, oh, tell you what, you were a really good footballer. I get uncomfortable about that. Because again, all my childhood, it wasn't that. You know, it wasn't that. And as I said, listen, it is what it is. And it's but I do know my dad loves me, and I do know, even though they don't say it, I know it.
Yeah.
But it's something as a kid we didn't get that.
It's something that you wanted at a young age, just to give you that.
And now looking back, that's what I think I've been craving all my life, you know, in terms of, and why I am partly as well the way I am, you know.
No, 100%. It's incredible to think about too. Like it's something that you would probably think it's so small now, because you probably undoubtedly say this to your kids, like how many times a day, and you're saying, going like, it's a small thing, and it's.
And listen, he's not bad, or he doesn't mean a bad thing. It's just the way he grew up.
Yeah.
It's all he knew.
Generationally, yeah.
And I've seen it in other families as well. It's not just my family, by the way. But I think it's so important that, by the way, you can be hard to people. You can be hard on people and say, right, that's not right, or that's wrong, or whatever. There's no issue with that. But I also think a big thing, and what I try to be for my kids now is, I think a big thing is you have to also tell them when they've done well, and be proud of them, and tell them you're proud of them, and encourage them to feel comfortable. Like, again, it wasn't anything to do with them, my parents. I never felt comfortable going to my parents with problems, because I didn't want to hurt them, or I didn't want to upset them. My mum was Christian.
Yeah.
And my dad wasn't now, but my mum was like good living, and went to church, and there was lots of things, and I never felt comfortable going to tell them. And then I ended up telling them lies, which absolutely killed me. Killed me, because you know what I'm like, and it used to kill me, because I was telling them lies to protect them, because I didn't want to hurt them. But
the only person was not benefiting from it, the only person that was actually deflecting from it, hurting from it, was you.
Yeah, but then I was hurting them as well, because then if I got found out in a lie, I was hurting them.
Yeah.
So it was a big circle, you know. But, and again, I just want my kids to feel comfortable to come to me with anything, you know. And that's one thing I've always said: no matter what they do in their life, no matter what they're doing in their life, I have their back. And listen, I'm not saying my mum or dad didn't have my back, because that's not right. You know, they did have my back, but it wasn't that we were brought up in a family, or a generation of families that you get
shared that emotion,
feel comfortable going and talking about anything to your parents, you know. And that's where I might be different. Like I always say to my kids, no matter what's going on in your life, just make sure you come talk, because I just see it, and being around football, being around people, and so many people with mental health problems and struggling. And the only way that you can't do away with it, but help with things is by talking, and hopefully people feel comfortable to come and talk to you.
Well, I hope that I've set up different programs and stuff in the Irish League now that's kind of combating mental health and different things, and I'm a big advocate for it. And I think that I have my own problems. I thought I was depressed at Crusaders, didn't go to bed until 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock most days. Got up, pretended to walk a dog in time for Lucy coming home to the house to make sure she thought I was actually out of bed. Do you know what I mean? And when you look back at things, you're kind of trying to put this facade on that everything's fine, and it's very easily to see that things aren't.
It's not. Not been there. Everybody, I think everybody, if most people are honest, we've all been there at some stage, but a lot of us don't. Me included at one stage, and not a lot of us don't feel comfortable going and talking to people. And again, people sometimes think, "Oh, he's looking for sympathy, or he's looking for this." And the more I've got older, and the more I've been around the football club and stuff like that, when I was there, I think for anybody to be able to come and say that they're not looking sympathy, it's a big thing for anybody to be able to be open to say. And listen, we've seen the situations this year in the Irish League. It's so sad, and to see people losing their lives to that. And we need
something.
We need something to be done about it, and we needed to try and reduce it and get people to feel comfortable talking to people, and like, because we've all been there, and I was there at one stage when my granddad died. So, and it's funny, Johnny, because I'd done a day in the studio with BBC for one of the match days, and they touched on things, and I mentioned about it. And it was funny, it was just before Christmas. It was a couple of weeks before Christmas. And about 2 days before Christmas Day, I got a phone call from a player. And he had listened to the show that day. And he phoned me up asking me, what could he do? Because he was gone. And I just went, I am so glad I mentioned that day, because if I hadn't have, what would have happened? Nobody knows. I'm not saying that anything would have happened. But the fact that he felt comfortable because of what I said in the radio that day, coming and talking to me. And then I know he's got help since, which can only be a plus and a bonus.
And that's the same with me with that program. I've had 3 or 4 boys put through, and it's never anything to do with me. It's, I can help you, but I take nothing to do with your journey. I just signpost you to the right people. And I don't want, not that I don't want to know your problems, but I want you to be confident enough to come to me to be like, nothing's ever going to leave me.
Yeah,
but that you're with the professionals at this stage, and I can help put you in contact with these people. And it's huge, as you say. You don't genuinely know what may have happened, but the fact that you know now what's happened is positive.
It's more positive than where he was at that stage anyway.
When we go back to your career, and you've obviously signed in England, you've had a bit of a spell in England then, a couple of different clubs. What was that change like for you to go full time from where you were? I know you say you're right road on, you were probably...
No, listen, I was actually, believe it or not, I was actually alright. But the funny story ever was the guy Rob Kelly I told you about at 13 said it wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
Wolves. I was joining that summer as a YTS, and we got word a month before he was coming in as a better youth. Rob Kelly.
Well, here, at least he was going to sign you anyway, so...
No, he wasn't going to sign me.
But you said he...
I know, but it was another guy.
Oh, right, okay, fair enough.
And I went, you're joking me. And to be fair to him, I said this day, he's the best coach, manager, person I've ever worked under or worked with in my life. He was absolutely brilliant for me. But I remember him the first day. He said, listen, I need an individual word with you. And he pulled me and he said to me, listen, I know what happened to Wolves. I know what I said. You're on a clean slate, and I will give you every opportunity. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bring you out every afternoon to work on your runs, because you're lack of pace. I'm going to bring you out in the afternoon, and I'll make 2 yards for you. Right? We're understanding the game. And he says, that's the only thing I can do. And to be fair to him, like my first year at Blackburn, I finished with 57 goals, got the Youth Cup final, played for the reserves, everything couldn't have went any better. It was just incredible. So it was, and he was brilliant for me, and I I trusted him and I let him in, and he done so much good for me, and then I stayed there, and the second year, an under 18 level, decent again, started again, but unfortunately they moved me halfway through the first year to the reserves, and I didn't get a full year with Rob because I was really enjoying it, and I went into the reserve team training, and then I had an old school person, and me and him just didn't see eye to eye. You know, it would just we just said, and I went from one guy to the complete another opposite, and I was probably too young at that stage to be working with somebody like him.
Yeah.
When I'd been getting so much good out of the other one, but anyway, West Ham put a 500,000 bid in for me that year, and it was knocked back. And then after that,
Devastated.
After that, it just all went in this. I stayed there. I scored goals, and then my final year, I got into the first team, and I made a substitute appearance away to Portsmouth, and come on, set up the goal. And then I hadn't played for 4 weeks. I think it was 4 or 5 weeks maybe. I've been on the bench and hadn't played the reserves, so they arranged a behind the doors match for us, for me to get some match fitness, and a couple other people had been on thing, and during it I took a stress fracture in my back, and that was it. So I went from coming on a sub to a stress fracture in my back
Within the space
5 days. Yeah, and then that was it. Then I went in, got a scan. They told me I had a back of about a 60-year-old, and they reckoned I was born with it, and because I had a double hernia when I first went to Blackburn, and they reckon that because of my back, my front had been taking subsidising the pain, the slack, and that's why that ripped. And then whenever that ripped, that's whenever it was healing. My other end was taking the pain, and then that's when it come to the front. That's what the specialist told me at the time. They said to me at the time, I didn't know if I would be able to come back and be okay with full-time football, because again, you're going back off quite a bit, like. And unfortunately, in that period, come to April, and they had to make a decision on me, whether to keep me or release me, because they were making decisions on all the kids at April, so they could have a chance to go out and trials to other clubs and all that there, and that's the way it used to work in England. And again, they brought me in and told me they released me because of my injury, but not because of my injury, sorry, but because while I was injured, I'll be honest with you, Johnny, I was sitting drinking every day, you know, having a few drinks here, because I was bored, and you know, I have nothing to do, and then they turned around and said that, and I said, right, well, that's okay, that's fair enough. They released me. Well, they told me they were going to release me at the end of the season. I ended up, the next match after they released me, I went up to Newcastle. I played my first, it was my first match back, or second match back. I scored a hat-trick. The next match after that I played was scored 2 again. And then QPR, who were in the equivalent of 3rd division, League One now, like,
League One, yeah.
they come in and asked to take my contract over the end of the year, and them days you could sign players at that stage was the window still open, yeah. And I think called Rotherham as well, the two of them come in. But me being me, and again, as much as I didn't like Tell, I went and asked him for advice. What did he think I should do? And he turned around and he said to me, listen, I don't think you should go and sign for a club now at the end of the season, because if you don't get a contract by them, it'll look bad that you've been released by 2 clubs in 1 year. So I took him at his word. He says, you're safer staying here and playing here, and then seeing
what
who
happens.
comes in.
Yeah.
And I took him on his word, and I didn't do it. I've probably one regret. And looking back now, and what I've learned through people in football, I would never ever done that again. I would go with my own mind, and I wouldn't ever change on that. And then ended up, Henning Berg was playing for Blackburn at the time, and he really liked me, and he sent me out to his club in Norway. So I went out there till the end of my contract at Blackburn, which is the end of July. I'd finished, and then that was me free then. And I went out there and played a few months, enjoyed it. It was good, it was a good experience, but again, it was the old Egg of Lawson, so they played 4-5-1 with big tall centre forward.
Right.
So I ended up playing left wing or right wing. So I did, but still scored something like 5 in 8 games or something like that. And the one game that I ended up playing up front, I scored 2. So they offered me a 2-year deal to stay. But while absurd, Roy Coyle had been on the phone, honestly, every week.
Yeah.
Every single week, offering me a good contract to come back home, 3-year deal, and he kept saying, come home, come home, come home. And then at the end, it says, right, I give you my word, I'll come home. So I end up telling the Norwegian club that I wasn't going to sign the contract, come back home. And in them days, Roy didn't have a mobile phone. It was just house phones.
Okay.
I had a mobile phone, but Roy didn't in them days. And I phoned his house, and literally it was a situation. He said, or he was over at Blackburn, believe it or not, doing his pro license,
Right.
or something, some badge.
Yeah.
And he was over there for a week. So she said she'd get him to phone me when he come back. So he phoned me when he come back, and he says to me, listen, I want you to come up and train with us. I says, you what? He says, I want you to come up and train with us. I said, but why do you want us to train? Sure, we've already agreed the contract, agreed the deal, and I give you my word. I wouldn't talk to anybody else. Oh, I've been over at Blackburn there, and I want to see you train for a few weeks first because, you know, they've told me a few things about you. Maybe I mean, I just said, you can go on it yourself.
Yeah.
And that was it. And I didn't ever speak to him again, and ended up, my brother was at Portadown at the time. He had just made his debut when he was 5th year in school at the end of that season. So Ronnie was there, and Ronnie says, do you want to come in and play a few games to keep yourself fit? You know, keep yourself ticking over in case you get someone across the water. And I said, I went in and played a few games and enjoyed it. And then he offered me, in them days you could sign month deals and stuff like that. I signed a month, and then I signed it 3 months, and then I stayed to Christmas, and we're top of the league at Christmas, and then I said, all right, I'll stay there in this season. And that's basically how it happened, like, you know. But it just shows you, and again, you put trust in somebody. Like I went from turning down £1,000 a week in Norway,
Yeah.
and coming back at home and having to sign for £75 a week. You know, and again, again, we'll go back to things as well, and that's why you take so many things into your own management. I could never do that to a player after that, because like, it wasn't just the hit you had to take in wages, it was the mental damage it done to you as well. And you thought you were so stupid, and it made you feel so stupid that you
Why did I give up that opportunity to go
take
back?
somebody at their word, and again, then it's weird the way it works, because the first year, and I always say karma always comes back to everything in life, and me, it's happened to me as well. But if you do something wrong by somebody, it'll always come back to you at some stage. And when Roy done that, the first year we come back, Glentoran and us were neck and neck. Come the last day of the season, we needed to win the league, and Glentoran needed us to get beat. We won the league, you know, and I just said, well, and I always remember sat and said nothing the whole season. I always remember at the end of the season, you know, interviewed me and said, well, what do you think of it? I said, first season all, and obviously Roy Coyle. I said, yeah, well, maybe Glentoran would have won the league if Roy Coyle had kept his word.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So because that's the way
He up there like Coyle.
You know, and that's football, and you know what's happened to me many a time throughout my career. You know, if people have done wrong and lied and done things like that, and it's always come back.
Yeah. When you go away to Norway, what's that like for a night out?
Believe it or not, I lived in a wee village in
A wee fisher village or something.
Yeah, well, honestly, there was I think there was one. There wasn't even a bar in it. The only bar was in the hotel that I stayed in, and it was like the smallest bar ever. Like, but I got a couple of nights out in the nearest town to it, about 20 minutes away or so. I got a couple of nights out, and it was good. Like, and it was good, but I would have had a few pints most nights in the hotel, because again, it was on my own in Norway, and I ended up getting to know the barman really well. He could speak good English, really good English, and I went down every night and had dinner, and then I just sat at the bar and had a couple of pints, and then went to bed. So I did, but it was good. I enjoyed it. That's a bit that killed me, because I was coming home because I thought that was our Glentoran. Glentoran had been in the Irish Cup final the year before, and all. I thought chance of win trophies, scoring goals, bloody. But Linfield were in touch as well. But at that time, Linfield had won the league, and then Morgan, that Davy Larmour was flying, Spike was there, and I just went, do you know what? I need to play. I want to play, and at the time, whenever Roy was talking, he was guaranteeing me that I was going to play, and then he was guaranteeing me that, and then I come home and he guaranteed me nothing. So listen, it is what it is. But
whenever you're at Portadown, that happens. You win the league, first season back, you end up signing for Glentoran.
No, not straight away.
No.
No.
Another
I stayed
after.
No, I stayed at Portadown for 5 years. You know, again, I stayed the first year, and then the second year, I signed a 1-year deal the second year. But my first 2 years at Portadown, I had a clause in my contract that if a club come in, I went for nothing. You know, and that's why the second year took reduced wages as well. You know,
Just to give you the opportunity to go.
Well, I was being fair to the club as well. You know, I said I'm not expecting you to pay me good wages and then let me go for free. So, you know, we've done that, and I stayed there the second year, and then at Christmas time in the second year, Ronnie and me agreed a 3.5-year deal or something, and so that brought me up to 5 years then, and I stayed there until the last season. It sort of turned a bit sour, because at that stage the League Ireland was going really well, and there was 16 or 17 players one season went from the League Ireland, England, Scotland and things like that, and I'd been back home and I'd scored a lot of goals and stuff like that, and I was still youngish. I was going, I wouldn't mind getting a shot at it back across the water. But I was looking at the Southern League and seeing people from there were getting chances, and I was going, do you know what, I've done 4 years here, maybe I need to look down there. And at the time, Drogheda were one of the best teams down there at the time, and they come in for me, and they approach me, as all clubs do, let's call a spade legally, you know. They approach me behind.
Everyone knows each other here, and it's too small, isn't it?
But everybody knows it goes on at every level in the world, and I don't understand why people deny it. But I ended up going down and meeting Drogheda, and we agreed a deal if we could get the other side of it sorted, you know. And so funny, because like, Ronnie's a tough taskmaster, like, and honestly, the lengths that he went to that time, and like, me and him are great now again, you know, down the line. But like, at that time, I just went to him and I said, listen, Ronnie, I want to go. You know, I've been here 4 years. It's nothing to do with Portadown. It's a league. I want to go to the Southern League and see him get across the water before I'm too old. And they come in and they made an offer, and they knocked it back. And then I get a phone call from the Drogheda chairman, and it was the St. Tanta Cup time, and we were due to play, and Kyle Neal will tell you this is funny, we were due to play Drogheda on the Tuesday night.
Right.
So Ronnie brought us in the Monday for training. That was okay. So we went in the train, got changed and all that, and he said, Gary, I said, what, I'm bored? I said, yeah, no problem, what's up? He says, you don't want to be here, do you? And I went, no, Ronnie, I don't. But I told you that. I said, I haven't lied to you. I says, you got me for free. You haven't had to pay me hardly any wages the first year. Pittance is the second year. I've done you 2 more good years. I says, so I don't owe you anything. I don't owe the club anything, and I think I've done okay for you. I just want to try something different. It's not that I'm asking you to sign for Glentoran or Linfielder.
Yeah.
I'm looking to go and try something different. He said, well, you're not going anywhere. I went, well, I am, because at the end of the contract, I'm going. It's as simple as that. And I says, you're getting offered good money for me.
Yeah.
For considering you got me for nothing and what I've given you. And he went, I don't see any of that money. Yeah. And I was sitting there going, yeah, no, you don't see any of that money, like, but the club's getting something back for me. And he's going, see if you don't want to be here, there's your form, sign it, away you go. He put a release form in front of me, and I, stupid enough, was going to sign it.
Right.
And I didn't think about it, and I went to sign it, and I went, yeah, what about my wages? He went, will you sign that? You're not getting any wages. As he said to me. So I went, well, I'm not signing it then. He says, you take the money and let me go. You know, as in the transfer fee. So he says, tell you what to do. Get out and don't come back. I said, okay, Rory, no problem. So I went in, and the lads were all sitting in the scenery. He says, what are you doing? And I said, he just told me to go. I'll come back. So he says, right, there on. So I get home to the house. I get off my clothes, get home, sitting in the house. The next thing, my phone's ringing. It was the Drogheda chairman. He goes, I might have accepted a win here. I was all sorted here. So I answered the phone. Hello, Chris, how are you? All right, Gary. What the F have you done? I says, what? Did you turn up for training drunk tonight? He says, what? He says, Chris, I'm sitting in the house here with Ma. He said, what are you on about? He says, Paul Doole's only off the phone. Said that he was talking to Ronnie, and Ronnie said you turned up for training drunk. He doesn't want anything to do with you. The deal's off. I says, you're joking me here, aren't you? I went, right, okay. He says, well, tell you what, I know you're not lying because I can hear it in your voice. You haven't been drinking. He says, will you come down as my guest tomorrow night to the match?
You down, was it?
And I went down the next night to the match. They could beat 6-0. Fabio Brian, who I ended up signing, he scored a hat trick. I just went like, there's no call for that, like,
Yeah.
you know. But again, it was just how ruthless Ronnie was, and that old generation again. You know, they were just ruthless. You know, they were ruthless as anything. And like, he was brilliant to me. Like my whole time there, he was brilliant. But near the end, whenever I said
You want
I wanted to go, then it just become ruthless. You know, and it happened with a lot of players. It wasn't just me, by the way. It happened with a lot of players. But that just seemed the way they managed in them days. And you look at that, and you go into management later in your career, and you go, oh, no, I can't treat people like that.
No.
I can't do that to people, you know. And again, it wasn't that I didn't like Portadown, or I was just trying to better myself and get an opportunity somewhere else and try the League of Ireland. And the flip side as well, it worked out because
Yeah.
if I'd have went and signed for Drogheda went bust about 6 months, 9 months later. So, you know, things happen for reasons too, you know, so it wasn't all bad that come out of it.
You went to Glens after this?
Yep. But again, I had to go to Glens and
Surely Roy Card wasn't still there?
no. But at that stage, whenever obviously that deal was off, I left Portadown. And like, I didn't play. I left Portadown. That was February, I think, in around that February, March, it's St. Cup. So I was only allowed to train with Anna. I was part of the agreement.
Yeah.
I wasn't allowed to go and train with any other club until my contract was up. So I was training with Anna at the time. They were really good to me and stuff like that. And then the only two offers I had at that time was Windy had got the job at Glentoran, and I'd done my license with Windy years before that.
Okay.
And I got to know him, and he contacted me, and he knew Ronnie because he had played under Ronnie.
Right.
So any stories that were circulating,
He knew it was
he
false.
knew that it wasn't right. So, and the other one was Joe McAree phoned me. He was at Dungannon at the time, and that was only two offers at that stage I had on the table. And I'd just come out of being in the Northern Ireland squads,
Yeah.
and there was nobody else wanted me. And so I had to go to Glentoran at the time when they said to me, like, Gary, the board's still a wee bit iffy on this, and I can't offer you a decent deal. And I signed it was less than what I was on to Portadown.
Okay.
But again, that was me again. I went, no matter what, out of principle, I will go and show that isn't true. All this stuff was being said, and to be fair, the first season I went and I had a really good season in that, and I done quite well when I went to Glens. But again, it's what I'd always tell lads now, you know, young kids now as well. People look at money all the time, but sometimes you have to. It's a short term loss for a long term gain, and that's what I had to do whenever I come back to Portadown. Like, I had to sign a Portadown for £75 a week, so I went from being £1,000 a week to £75 a week.
Yeah.
And it's some drop.
Yeah.
But I know if I was at the club that I was playing, that will all turn again, and I'll end up better off. And again, the same thing happened until the stage whenever I was at Glentoran. I'd went down again on my wages when I first signed for Glentoran, but by the end of the time at Glentoran, obviously Finney Harkins was out of the league at that stage. I ended up probably the highest paid player in the league. So by coming down, proving yourself again, you know, you'll always get back up there. And I think that's no matter what you do in life. I think if you believe in yourself and you have confidence in yourself, you can do that and get to where you want to be with hard work and determination.
I remember, I think I was telling you this earlier, but I remember sitting in my granny's house, and my granny, I never read a paper, but I always used to look at the football, the back, trying to check Liverpool scores, and I think it was 13 or 14, and you were on the back page where the Irish League part was, probably about 3 or 4 pages in, and I remember seeing a picture of you, and it was like, Hamilton signs for £1,000 a week, and I remember looking and going, £1,000 a week? Playing football? It's mental. And then I was sitting going like, this mad Irish League like thing. But it just proves though, like as you say, like you had this ability to go and do your job really well, and people should earn the money to represent that, I think.
Yeah, I think that applies at everything in life. You know, if you do well at your job, then you deserve to get paid what you're worth, you know, and But on the flip side of that, Johnny, as well, there's many a time, like I spent 4 years at Portadown when I wasn't paid what I should have been paid, and I was led to believe that I was on decent wages and then I found out that I was miles off everybody else, and you know, and then I took a year at Glentoran where I played on less wages, you know, so it swings and roundabouts too, but you know, but again, I think it always comes back to you as a person, and I have this weird saying, like a true saying to be fair, we all come in this world with nothing.
Yeah.
And we all leave this world with nothing. And as long as we've got enough to get by in life in between and pay your bills and look after your family and that, get a holiday here and there, then you should be happy. You know, it's money doesn't make you happy, and lots of people, lots of money are happy, and they're the ones that are the most unhappiest.
You would think that they would be, you know, like.
Yeah.
You have scored a lot of goals everywhere, and you end up leaving Glens. We're going to touch on your style at Glens as well, but you also go to Glentoran, you spend a few years there. You go to Glenavon after that, and that's where I think that your career obviously extends. You become a manager as well, player manager, and different things like that.
Well, it all come about in the first place again, believe it or not. Roy Coyle come back to haunt me again, so he did. But
Roy's torturing
Roy come back to haunt me again, so he did while I was at Glentoran. But as I say, Scott Young got the job at Glentoran, so he did after Alan MacDonald. And Scotty come in, to be fair, I think it was the last 6 weeks or so of the season or whatever it was, and Scotty wanted to play the 4-3-3 formation with me through the middle,
right.
and I've always been honest with everybody, Johnny. I'm not a single striker, you know, and I like to come and get the ball, and I like to go in behind as well, but I like to come and get on the ball, and I like to drift wide, and for me, if you want to be a single striker, you have to stay through the middle. You can't do all that. You have to stay through the middle. And I remember saying to Scotty after the first game, listen, Scotty, you're going to play that formation. I have to be fair to the team, you know, and I respect your decision to play that formation, but I can't play as a lone striker. You're not going to get the best out of me. If you're going to play that formation, then play me in midfield as a 3, or don't play me at all, because it's not going to suit me up. And you know, I think then he was planning to play the next season as well. Unfortunately for me, I went away in the end of the season, and then in pre-season, come back, I got that osteitis pubis.
Yep.
So it did, and it was killing me. But then Roy had been coming down to watch the training because he had to take the team in Europe because Scotty didn't have the badges. And them days you could have done that. You could have got somebody with a badge to cover for the Europe. And Roy had been coming down to training, and I was in agony, and I think Roy just saw he's throwing the towel in here, you know. But I went for a scan anyway, and I come back and it was osteitis pubis. But then when it come to the start of the season, Glentoran, I found this all out through time, like, but whenever Roy Coyle was manager at Glentoran to start, he come in and he made an example of the biggest player at the club was John Devine. He was a club captain, club legend, first player he got rid of.
I nail him, set the bar.
Set the ball, but like that. So Scotty had always talked to me about this whenever he was coach, and me and him would have been quite, not close, but we would always talked quite a bit about football and stuff. And he'd always said to me, like, that's one thing Roy Coyle done, the set standards. And then everybody was going, if he gets rid of him, he'd get rid of any of us. You know, it was chopping board. So I always knew that if Scotty ever got into management through Tottenham, it would happen, but I just wasn't expecting it to be me at the time. But obviously with me being injured and that, the club was also in a bit of financial difficulty, so they needed to get rid of money off the wage bill. So they ended up turning around and phoned Glenavon and told Glenavon that I was available on loan and would it be interested. Now I didn't know any of this at this stage. Nobody told me anything, but whoever was doing it above my head was doing it. But at the time, one of my dad's friends was on the board at Glenavon.
Okay.
And he'd phoned my dad saying, here, is Gary looking to get out of Glentoran? It's the first you've said that. And he went, no, not to know of. He says, well, we've been offering him on loan. Dad says, well, he hasn't told me anything, but I'll phone him and see. And I said, no, first I've heard of it. So obviously we were down. So first thing, maybe I may have phoned Scotty, what's the crack here?
Yeah.
I said, I think the club's trying to cut wages and maybe because you're injured and that. I said, right, dead on. So anyway, I said that I would go on loan, but that I was injured with osteitis pubis, and it could be 3 months, it could be 6 months, it could be.
Yep.
And he says, "What? Nobody's told us that." And I went, "Have I not even told you I'm injured?" "No." I says, "Right, okay." I says, "We'll leave it until the day of the meeting, and don't say anything. Just wait till we're sitting there, we're about to sign, and I'll bring it up." So it was Aubrey, Ralph, Adrian Tier, and me went down. It was the Welly Park, and we were sitting there. And the next thing he goes, "Right, Adrian, you happy with this?" And all. Now, at the time, I was, "Well, you said the figure that was on there, right?" Glenavon had agreed to pay £300 a week of my wages, right? And they were going to pay the rest for me to play for another club.
Glenn's going to pay £700 for you going down.
Right? Didn't make sense to me, but that's
what difficulties.
that was what the deal was, right? And anyway, we sat down, and he's all out in the form, Aubrey and all. Adrian's sitting there, and obviously me and Adrian knew what was going on, but Aubrey hadn't a clue. So next thing, Aubrey was sitting there, right, Raddy, you ready to sign? I says, "Sign?" I says, "What date's on that?" Date was obviously the next day.
Yeah.
What date are they paying me from? From the next day. I says, "But why, Adrian, why would you be stupid enough to pay me when I'm injured?" And he goes, "What? What? Has he not told you I'm injured?" "No." "All right. Why have you not told him I'm injured?" "So you're going to send me on loan to a club,
No.
and I'm injured, knowing that I can't play, and get them to pay wages? That's brutal." "Oh, well, tell you what we'll do. We'll pay your wages until you're back playing." But they were going to let Glenavon do that, and that just shows how dirty football is, you know. And anyway, that's what happened. And so Glentoran paid my full wages until I actually started officially playing for Glenavon, which is about 2 months down, about 2 months after it.
So see, at that stage, were you still going, like, turning up at the Glens, going to train or stuff?
No,
we obviously just all fully down.
Full down at Glenavon, getting treatment every day. Glenavon were brilliant to me, to be fair. They were really good that way. Lynn Carpenter used to come around to my house every day and treat me twice a day some days, and to try and get me back as quick as I could. But I went out and loan that year, and I ended up, I think I scored 21 goals, and Glenavon were second bottom in the league that year, you know, and the highest goal scored Glentoran, I think that year was about 13 or 14, you know.
Yeah.
And that was just the way it was. So I ended up going back again then to Glentoran, and at this stage of my relationship with Scotty was gone.
Yep. As it would be, yeah.
And he contacted me. He said to me, "Right, will you come back?" I said, "Scotty, of course I come back. I'm a professional. I'm owned by Glentoran.
Yep.
And you pay my wages. I would come back." I said, "But Scotty, our relationship's finished. After what you've done to me, it's done." I said, "But the same token, you pick me." I says, "Unfortunately, the only person I want to help is you."
Yeah.
Because
You
you're
have
picking me, I score goals,
it's your job.
you know, it's working. And I says, "But that's the way it is, but I don't mind." I said, "Because I love my time at Glentoran." I said, Glentoran were really good to me, the fans and that, they were really good to me. It's one club that really treated me well. So I ended up going back there then. Honestly, my career's been unbelievable, nightmare sometimes. But went back there. He sent me to the reserves at the start. I was training the reserves and playing in the reserves. And then the reserve team manager went and said, "Listen, he's been brilliant. He's been really good to the young kids. He's been helping them so much. Like, why
are you doing this?
Why just not put him in? You know, even if you don't get on and he's not talking, if he's going to play, he's going to play. You know, that's the way it is." And so he ended up putting me in. I don't think I started it until about September. I don't think I played in August. I was in around September, but I ended up scoring something like 12 or 13 goals before December the 13th. And I ended up playing the Glenavon job, come up in December the 13th.
Yeah.
But this stage then, I was out of the contract at the end of the year. And I just went, "Do you know what? I'm not signing again, no matter what, after the way the club's treated me. It's not to do with supporters, not to do with anything else. The way the club already done what he done on me, and then Scotty, Roy Coyle was obviously the person behind it as well." And I just went, "I'm not signing again." So when that job come up, then I contacted Adrian. I said, "Listen, I know I can't officially apply for this job I'm a player and I'm under contract, but if you are interested in me, I'm interested in the job, and I'll make sure I get out of the Glentoran, because they can't keep me off this, because they were looking to get rid of me last year for nothing, so they can't turn around now and do anything different. And I've went back and I've been professional, I've done my job. So to be fair to Scotty, I went them. I actually went met Glenavon the morning of the game, played in the afternoon for the Lens, and then after the game I come out and a phone call, if you can get out of your contract in Glentoran, you've got the job. So then I phoned Scotty and said, listen, I've been offered the Glenavon job. I said, after the way the club's treated me and everything else, I've come back, I've done what I've done for you. I'm leaving at the end of the year anyway. Would you not just let it happen now, please? I said, because I'm not staying enough. I think I've done fair enough. And he went, listen, I'll not stand your way. But at the time, they got a new chairman in called Terence Brannigan. So we literally went and spoke to him then, and he was looking $5,000 for me or something. And at the end of the day, then, to be fair, there was a guy at Glenavon. The Urban family were really, really good to me, and Glenavon had no money because they had just paid off Marty. They had sacked Marty,
Okay.
and then no money left. And he said he'd stump up the fee for Glentoran, and that's how it all happened. And
Incredible.
I went from there, and it was brilliant. And like, I'm so grateful to the Urban family and Spicy Gordon at that time, and then afterwards the sons were brilliant to me as well at the club, and you know, they couldn't have done enough for me to try to help us as much as we could. And again, that's the reason why I ended up at Glenavon, and the deal ended up happening. Only for that, it wouldn't happen, because Glenavon didn't have the money at the time to pay for it.
Did that become your most enjoyable time in football?
Yeah. First season at Glentoran, I really enjoyed it. But just my personality again, all I get a buzz out of, or a kick out of, or excitement out of is making other people happy. And especially when it's somebody close to me. And obviously going to Glenavon and winning 2 Irish Cups, I hadn't won a trophy in 16 years. I followed them from a wee boy. My 2 uncles played for them. My granddad supported them. And when we won the 2 Irish Cups as well, he wasn't well, you know. There's one of them, I think it was, I can't remember now again, my memory's brutal with things, but I know he's about both of them. One of them, he had to be wheeled into the semi-final in a wheelchair, you know, and stuff like that. But and the kids were there, and what I like in my life in terms of the people I like in my life. My mum was there, my dad still wasn't there. He watched it on the TV, but my family was there and that. And it just made it, that was the happiest time because of that, because they were there. Like I told you, I don't get excited by anything. It's just, again, my personality. It's not that I don't want to, I just don't get it. But seeing my granddad's face and seeing my kids' face, and you can't replicate that, and you can't replace that. That vision's still with me to this day, and every time I mention it, you know, and just seeing him and knowing that, like, he followed me when I was at Glentoran, he followed me at Portadown, and I knew his team was Glenavon, and Glenavon had never come in for me, and the one time they did, it fell through away before that. And I knew it was all he ever wanted, was to see me playing for Glenavon at some stage, and it just was so good the way, again, I think things happen for a reason, the way it ended up with Glentoran, the way I got treated, and the way Roy Coyle come back. And I don't blame Scotty, by the way. At the end of it, whenever I got speaking to him, he's a young manager, first gig in the management. You've got somebody like that who's a powerful figure, who's a legend, let's call a spade, he's a legend, and he's trying to tell you what you're thinking.
This is what I've done.
Well, I have to maybe do this, and you know, it worked for him. It worked for him, you know. So it's maybe what happened, and I had never been. Me and Scotty spoke since it, and to be fair to him, he apologised, you know, for doing that at the very start, and you know, we get on really well now, and you know, God love him. Like his poor wife died that time, and me and him speak, and I was at his funeral, at the wife's funeral, and he's had such a hard time as well. So it's not easy for anybody in life, but just, I think that all those things just were meant to happen, you know, because if that hadn't happened, I probably wouldn't end up Glenavon and then on loan. And then whenever, because I've been there on loan for a year, people knew me.
Yeah.
People got to see the other side of me and see that I was, what sense switched on, but I was interested in that other side of the game. And then obviously I went back to Glentoran, and within a few months the job come up. I was coming in my contract, you know. I just think everything just fell into place for it to happen. And as I said, somebody like Gordon Irwin, you know, who, because I've been in the year there that year on loan, he got to know me. Then he was prepared to put it.
Yeah. Understood the character.
And he was prepared to put that money to it that the club couldn't afford at that time, you know, to make the deal happen. So it just, all those things just fell into place. But as I said, yeah, like, the only thing that makes me happy in life is seeing my closest happy.
Yeah.
You know, you give me £1 million tomorrow, don't get me wrong, I like it.
You like it, absolutely.
But you know, it's seeing other people happy. It's a seaman management, you know, and playing. And you could get any video, any trophy I ever won. The first thing I do is go into change rooms on my own, or else go to my family. That's just the way I was. As soon as we won the cup, straight into the change room. Said, them days I smoked. If I hadn't had a smoke, just had time to myself. Didn't like all the fuss. I didn't like all the, unless it was with my closest.
Speaking of smoking, I was told a little story that you were playing in an Irish League select team with David Jeffrey, and there was a little problem that happened in the change room.
Listen, like, I'm not joking you, like, all my life, I still to this day don't even know if my mum or dad could tell you this, I smoked. They probably know. And that's the truth, right? That's the truth, right? But you know, I never wanted to.
There's no way.
But I never wanted to hurt them. I never wanted to actually say I smoke.
Hope they don't watch this. Guy doesn't smoke.
Or sit and smoke in front of them. I literally never done it. I never done it in my life.
Right.
But everybody else knew. But because my mum was good living and my dad wasn't a drinker, wasn't a smoker, and I never felt comfortable doing it. I didn't want them to be like I let them down, or, you know, whatever it was that it would have affected them in that way probably. So, but like, I smoked that. I started smoking at school when I was 12 or 13, when I was bullied at school. And I don't advocate that to any kid, because it's the worst thing you could ever do. But I did, and can't continue it. But again, because of my personality, I used to go in at half time and sit and have a quiet smoke and switch away from everybody, listen to team talk for 2 or 3 minutes, and then just go on my own.
Yeah.
And I just switch off and get away from everybody. I had too much going on around me, and that was the way it was. I always done it for every team that I played for. And then we come this, I think it was under 23 select team or something against England or something. Davey was there and all. But again, I was always honest to the managers. I was always, like, whenever I played at Blackburn, there's people done it. There's people, obviously. It wasn't as if I was the only person done this, by the way, you know. Well,
No,
and I'm not advocating it again. I don't think it's right, and it shouldn't have, but it was something that I always done. And this game, because Davey, it was the first time I played for Davey, I said, Davey, listen, I have a smoke at half time, like, just let you know. Not under my watch, you're not. I said, that's okay. You joking with me? No. At all, no problem. So, again, said the first half, scored. I think we're 2-0 up, I think, at half time. Can't remember, we were winning anyway, and I scored. Come in half time, and I went, Davey, alright, we go out for a smoke here? I went, no. I said, Davey, just take me off. Take me off. So he took me off. We did. Just take me off. Got a sore groin or something like that. Just take me off. And that was the end of it, you know. But as I said, like, Davey tried to sign me 3 times, and the more I think of it now, like, well, I don't know what would have happened there if I ever.
Yeah, could have went way further on.
Because I don't want to go. If he was away, he was that game. He might never let it happen. And as I said, yeah, in them days the way I was, if he didn't, I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have signed it. Just me.
You probably would have had to ask that question. Here's, like, you know, I go for a few draws here at half time.
And looking back, like, it's like, again, it's stupid. It is, but that's what I was, and my character. I never changed in them times, and I wouldn't have changed for anybody, you know. But again, even with other players, whenever I went into management, there were some players done certain things.
Yeah.
I never changed them. You know, I never asked them to change. I try to work with them, try to get the best out of them. And
Some
that's-
people don't like doing warm-ups and don't want to be out there for 45 minutes before. And
there's people when I played using snooze, that's snooze or whatever, but whatever, you know. But as I said, like everybody's different, everybody's unique, and my job and what I always tried my best to do was try to get the best out of that individual and try to work with what his strengths were and his weaknesses were to make him a better person or a better player.